Welcome, one and all, into Inside LAFC, the Max and Vince podcast, returning to the glorious Performance Center. No planes going by. Did have a helicopter go by a little bit because this is very, very busy airspace. We are recording this on the Tuesday before Austin FC, so many of you might be listening to this after that result. So we'll talk about a lot of what's coming up, and there is a lot for the club, a little bit of Austin FC as well, coming off the defeat, their second road defeat, second overall in Colorado. There's Vince LaRosa. My name is Max Bretos, and this is a big spot for the club.
This has been the toughest month of the season. We all knew it, right?
For a lot of clubs, too, we should say.
Yeah, it's everyone because the games are picking up. This is the time of the year where everyone knows that they're going to have 2 games a season, and if you're successful, you get yourself more games. So that's what LAFC does. They're a successful club. They got more games. And, talking to Steve and just being like, you guys knew going into we knew going into it that this would be one of the busiest spells of the season. And we thought we had a lot of depth, and it's whittled down a little bit, unfortunately, due to injuries.
Yeah, and that's a big issue that is frustrating because that was something that separated LAFC from the rest of the league. It's now something that they're going to have to deal with and hopefully get healthy over this next stretch. They have that 2-week gap coming up here in June also, which has already been earmarked. We spoke to Steve Cherundolo about as a time to get everyone back and healthy for that summer run. Did want to mention we'll be joined by the new Director of Football Operations, Marco Garcés.
I'm really excited to talk.
This is going to be a great
scouting. Talk to him about what he's looking for in young players. That's pretty cool.
For all of those of you that are wondering when is it going to happen, when is the first Los Angelino homegrown player going to come out of LAFC? This is the guy to ask. And from what we understand, they're very optimistic that is going to start to churn that conveyor belt very soon. It's an exciting thing that we never had. They've had some homegrown players that they were able to sign, like, essentially like Bryce Duke and Mamadou Fall, guys that they had to go look out from outside that weren't LA-based. We know this is fertile ground, and Marco's been here specifically to help connect the dots from the kids playing in the park to the academy to the Las Vegas Lights to LAFC.
Yeah, I think John mentioned it when he was hired when they did the press conference was someone like Marco wouldn't have made sense for them 2 years ago, right? Because the academy, the way they wanted to grow it specifically was to start from ground zero, start from scratch, move a group up, which this group that is now kind of you're seeing getting more first team training minutes. They got a little bit of time in that COVID year. Christian Torres, Tony Leone, Eric Duenas, they're part of that very first group, but they were 13 and 14 years old when they very first came on. So they got to kind of grow up in the LAFC way. But now that the academy has every single level, there's obviously MLS Next Pro, all those other levels that are coming together. This is the perfect time to bring in a man that can really professionalize it, and he can look at it from top to bottom and say, okay, we've connected the academy now. Now the next step is, to your point, that homegrown that doesn't just play a little bit, but stars for LAFC, and then possibly moves on to Europe, which is it's got to be something that this club is looking forward to, because once you establish that, clubs are going to keep coming to you.
It is, and we've seen it with FC Dallas. Now Philadelphia Union's been really glowing with their academy. It's not just an apparatus to build your club and find star players to play for your team specifically. Eyeballs are all over this league, and they've been waiting for that shoe to drop in Los Angeles, and Marco Garcés is the guy who's going to be in charge of doing that. And we'll also talk, because he's coming from Pachuca, which is a club that did this very well when it came to developing players. We'll talk about the relationships between the ever-growing relationship between Liga MX and MLS, which is a game changer in many ways to that next step.
I think we're going to have to do more than one with Marco at some point this season.
Okay, we'll ask
also,
him.
He's got his expertise for scouting South America in Mexico for Manchester United.
And scouting South America is a big deal for this club, no doubt about it. So maybe a little briefly, we'll talk about Colorado. It was we all waited for this game to happen. We knew it was going well. There was times when LAFC would fall behind and they'd find a way back. At some point, you can't. And this was obviously a game that is going to be defined by officiating, and we could talk about that. I as we talked on our LAFC 360 shows, can't really argue any of those calls. By the book, pro referees can show you that is the right call, and you'll kind of have to eat some humble pie on that. The over officiating is what I have concerns about. The the overusage of VAR,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes the not effective use of VAR, where it was with the penalty retake, where it took so long.
Right.
And then you're sitting there as in a sport where the appeal is that it's free flowing, and it's just stopped.
Well, we talked about that on the same show, and then later on we had John McCarthy, who had to deal with that and he came to the exact same conclusion. He goes, "Look, it is what it is. You got to move on. You got to continue to play the game." He goes, "But I just wish there wasn't so much VAR, and I just wish it didn't take so long." Because our stance on it was officially that yes, end of the day, letter of the law, all those calls are probably correct. At least the ones against LAFC. We did say we thought that there should have been a penalty that Chicho won in the box towards the end of the half. But the one thing that we didn't love was, like, how are you not able to see the goalkeeper's foot off the line in real time? Do we need VAR for that? Because now it feels like we're now in that realm of where the offside rule has gotten, where we all hate it, is like, God, it's down to the millimeter, and is that exactly how we want the game to play? Offside, maybe I can
don't want
understand.
that.
But, like, for this, it's right there, and the assistant's right there. Come on. He can just look at it, and if he sees it, he sees it. If he doesn't, I mean, LAFC almost went down and created a chance after that. The amount of time that was spent between the save, because the ball member didn't go out of play, and they brought it in, they kept it in play. Actually, it would have been, I don't know, maybe if the ball would have gone out of play and they would have just kicked off right away, it would have been good for LAFC. I don't know if they would have stopped them in time, but that was a bummer.
That was a bummer indeed. If I always fear, I know this is just me being a conspiracy theorist, that they'll eventually start using VAR for illegal throw-ins and stuff like that. So, I want them to stop now and focus on offsides, handball in front of goal.
You know one thing they don't use VAR for that they probably should? When balls go out of play.
Yeah.
Like, how many times have you and I watched a game, and yes, it's maybe just a throw-in, but the ball kind of goes out of play, and we're like, I think that was out of play. And everyone goes, oh, I don't know, and then a goal gets scored.
And look, if you're gonna be so technically innovative with VAR, when are we gonna stop the clock from running and not have it on someone's watch, right? If we're gonna be so avant-garde.
This has become a whole
I know.
different podcast.
I didn't want to go there. But it's all this. And backtrack. Okay, I'll stop. Backtracking the plays as to see if something fouled on the way to a goal. It's a slippery slope. That all said, LAFC did not deserve to
No, they didn't.
to
They
win this
didn't play
game.
well, and for whatever reason, whether it was intent or tired legs. And I get it. And we talked about it. The altitude, you can't use it as an excuse, but it is a reality. And we think, or at least myself personally, is you can get through altitude when you're playing well, or it's a good game. But when you have three decisions go against you so quickly early on in the game, now you're down 2-0, it's almost too deflating. And yes, professionals are paid to put that out of mind and try to get back into the game, but it seemed like there was no way back into the game. Everything was stacked against them between the altitude, the calls, the fatigue, the injuries. Obviously, Ryan Hollingshead goes out. It would have been a miracle if they were able to get anything out of that game. Maybe they deserved a goal, but it still felt like that was Colorado's game.
It was a loss. And Colorado's really good at home, and we can talk about altitude, but they have not been beaten, 30 games, 33?
No, 22 games unbeaten at home.
22 games. So I don't know where I got the 30 number. By the way, Austin,
really trying to make Colorado look good.
They're unbreachable. By the way, Austin FC, same situation. Played over the weekend at altitude, Real Salt Lake.
Mm-hmm.
Were leading. They played okay, and then they got away from the second half after they got a red card.
Right. To a key player.
And then they had to hold on, and they were tired. They looked very tired at the end. So Real Salt Lake has a distinct home field advantage. So this is something that's going to certainly come into view. I think depth has been such a positive, but when Ryan Hollingshead goes down, you have to bring Kellen Acosta to right back. Then it's not a strength. And you're just like everybody else in this case. You have to find a way to do it. And you can't bring a guy off the bench to give a difference. They didn't have that because of the injuries. This is the first time all season you could say that.
No, I think we're seeing a lot of teams get tired at this point, getting heavier legs because, as you said, it's the first time during the season where you're going to have 2 games a week consistently, right? There is going to be this 2-week break, but you got to get there healthy first. And really, I think Steve's bigger problem with that was it's fine. There's going to be fatigue, but he just wanted a little bit more intense, a little bit more aggressiveness, like try to play through it a little more. And I think what he saw was a team that just, I don't want to say they gave up because they're still professional athletes and they were out there to do a job, but he was telling us, you got to run a little bit more. You got to just do a little bit more.
Bare minimum. You got to.
You're not out there to run just for running's sake. He's like, but I think he even used the word threshold. There's a threshold of at least the minimum that you got to do. And he's like, I just felt like we didn't quite ever pushed beyond that threshold.
So LAFC Austin, they hope to push through that threshold here on Wednesday night. The game is on KCOP.
Big game.
Heath Pierce will join me in the booth. We have Jordan Harvey joining Mark Rogandino, so tune in for that. If you can't make it out to the stadium, we expect it to be rocking as it always is. Austin's a team that tries to get after it. Had a great start. Remember this whole, what was it, the breakfast burrito?
Breakfast tacos.
Breakfast tacos going back and forth. Austin's off the boil a bit.
It was a little fun. Yeah, they've kind of fallen off a little bit too, and as we said, Perea has got a red card. He's a pivotal player for them. Austin, the way they became a better team, because they've always played a somewhat attractive style of football, is they've been better against transition. They were getting carved up by teams that were willing to sit back and soak pressure and then just hit him in transition. Perea was really the guy that did that for him. He's the linchpin between the two. So we'll have to see how they rejig some things with, I think maybe Alexander Ring moves back in that position, or Johan Valencia might kind of fill in that spot. But when you find a guy that really does that job, you don't want to miss him in a pivotal game, an away game where you know you're going to see waves of pressure. But I think the Philadelphia game was fun because it was two teams playing their style and not giving an inch, and they were going 100 miles an hour. I think this game will be different in the fact that the teams will still play their style, but their styles are a lot more similar. So it'll be a more flowing game, a little more positional, and I think for the football purists, this might be a better game to watch just because it's going to be two teams that want to knock the ball around a little bit, find pockets of space.
Gabrielsen, who's the Norwegian defender, and Cascante, they gave up a lot of goals. Those two guys have made this a much more fierce defensive outfit. Diego Fagundes has been one of the best players in the league, in my opinion, even though Sebastian Driussi is their top scorer.
Sebastian Driussi does not play as well as he does if it's not for Diego Fagundes.
Yeah, Fagundes leads the league in assists, last I checked, so he's been really good. So this is a dangerous team. Got those great green jerseys. We like Austin. Austin's weird. We've only played
We like Austin.
Austin's weird.
Way to get the tagline in there.
Yeah, Austin's weird. I love Austin because Waylon
City.
Jennings and Willie Nelson back in the day, some of my favorite music. It's a club we've played 3 times last year. That was their first year. LAFC won all 3.
Yep.
So it's a team that they haven't dropped a point to.
Do you think they remember that? Do you think there's any history in that, or they're just like, yeah, that was our first year?
Yeah, and I don't think LAFC really remembers it too much because those games were part of trying to get above that playoff line, which they weren't able to do in the end. But they were good moments, but you always said it's an expansion team.
Yeah, I mean, look, they score a lot of goals. They can be effective going forward. But to your point, I do think if you can get at their back four, you can have some joy. And that's what LAFC's maybe been lacking the past couple of games is getting sustained pressure in and around the other team's defense, in and around their box. Just for whatever reason, whether it's game state, like it was in Colorado, or just because Philly plays such a style that's just not going to happen. You're never going to have time on the ball. So this is a game where I feel like if you want to get your confidence back, although Austin is playing well, it's a game where I think you really think you can get some joy and you can knock the ball around. I think if I'm looking at someone like Carlos Vela, this is a game for him to maybe get back in rhythm.
That would be great to see. And some good news with some of the injured players. We mentioned Ryan Hollingshead, and they're going to be tracking him. They just don't know where it is, so it's going to be day-to-day, but he's here. Eddie Segura's training with the team. It's about getting fitness, so I don't think you see him very soon.
Okay, we did LAFC 360 on 110 Football.
We want to answer some of the questions.
A lot of people were like, I feel like you've been telling me Eddie Segura is going to be back for the last 6
like we have.
weeks. We have. So you're right. You're not wrong. For all of you, I'm not gaslighting you here. But what we should define what back is for Eddie Segura. He had a long-term injury, so an ACL injury. He's been out for a long time. Back for us.
No pain. Yeah. No drawbacks with the injury. It's just got to get from that fitness from here to here, which is a lot for athletes of this level.
And I think we've been pretty consistent in saying this. Hey, we're seeing Eddie do more and more. Now he's back in full training, but we always said back for Eddie is still going to be a cameo appearance, right? Because he missed a whole preseason. He's going to have to build up to 90 minutes. Not like just because he's been getting fit the best he can on his own, he's not going to be able to just drop in and play 90 minutes. So he's a lot farther along. I think we're a lot closer to seeing him. But even then, back is going to be, I think, a cameo appearance.
Franco Escobar also day-to-day, but a very positive light on him as to his ability to return. And then Murillo's back. And they said Brian Rodriguez should be pretty close to ready.
They're hoping he might be in the squad.
Might be in the squad. So there's some good news to pass on. And you just got to get through this stretch. And I don't want to say
you get the 2-week break.
I don't want to say get through it. You got to enjoy this stretch because you have 2 home games. You have a game at the Galaxy, obviously at U.S. Open Cup, and you have, let's go in chronological order, Austin at home, at Columbus over the weekend, at the Galaxy next Wednesday, San Jose at home next Saturday, and then 2 weeks, which I guarantee you, and we spoke to Steve Cherundolo, they are looking forward to just to take a breath, to get guys some time off, to get some guys to decompress, to get guys back fit, to get everyone, the band back together so that they can approach the very busy summer months where you hope some help will come when the market opens as well. So the finished product for LAFC kind of we'll see there in the summer. But first,
the MLS season is like 4 seasons in one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much going on. Like you said, they're just kind of
been waiting for, right?
Yeah.
That's where you said this is where maybe they fill that DP slot, they get some new additions, and then everyone's healthy. That's where you go, okay, this is the squad right here.
Yeah, it starts out as kind of like a little bit of a jog, and then it's a sprint right to that spot where you get a couple weeks, and then you can kind of sit back and go, okay, what do we have here? What data points do we have? Hey, look, the market's going to open back up. Then the summer months can be a little bit of a slog. Just because it's hotter, there's more midweek games coming in, whether it's Open Cup or just the regular season. And then it's back to sprint again because you're just racing to get playoff positioning. And I think if you're LAFC, you're looking at it. You had such a bad result against Colorado. Austin is a team that's obviously up in the ranks. They're no longer second because Dallas has kind of paced up ahead of them. But you don't want one defeat to turn into 2 or 3. So you want to really put in a good performance, especially at home, win your home games, show off for your home crowd. So they're probably going to put all into this. Then you get on the road, and it's an Eastern Conference team. And I'm not saying that they're going to take their foot off the pedal, but you might look at it as a
Rotate
chance
a little bit.
to rotate because you turn back midweek, and it's the game that really matters.
Because you've already won the 2 games. You're starting to see the finish line. When I say the finish line, I'm talking about a semifinal, a final, and then you can start thinking about winning the U.S. Open Cup. But there it is, within reach. And if they get past the Galaxy, and look, historically they've never gotten the result at that place, then it's either Sacramento or San Jose. You're going to like their chances there. Right. And then, lo and behold,
you're in the semifinals.
Yeah. And I asked Steve Cherundolo, it's been great. They prioritized the Open Cup. And he said, look, we prioritize everything. We want to prioritize everything. It's both. So it's hard to do that. And that's why the health of this club is so important heading into Austin and then Columbus. And hopefully you have the chance to rotate that. But there it is, a chance at a rival and a chance to get you're 4 wins away from a trophy. Yeah,
Austin, a direct competitor at home. You want to win that game, like I said, especially coming off a loss. Columbus is a team that's struggling, and they're in a different conference. Maybe you can move some things around because they don't frighten me the way that they used to. I know they still have Zeller, but they're very pragmatic, and they're very kind of plodding in the way that they move around. So maybe you can move some pieces for that. But like you said, got to win that Galaxy game.
Got to win that game.
It's at their place. It's a one-off. Obviously, the only other time we've had a game that is of consequence against the Galaxy, we have won it. So you want to keep being able to hold that over their head until we get more years where we can get all those trophies, because they seem to want to hold that they have so many trophies over our head as if we were going to win 7 in a year. You got to get that win. And obviously, San Jose, we don't necessarily like San Jose, but I think if you gave supporters the opportunity,
that's a rivalry should be built.
Yeah, there's 4 games. You say there's 4 games. They're pretty tough. There's some injuries going on. You can only win 2. I think they'd circle Austin and Galaxy. You'd love to win all of them, but they would circle those 2.
The San Jose, I would say, because you're heading into that break, you want that good taste.
You do want the boot. Yeah,
you can't get it. You can't have it all. Or could you? We'll see.
So far, the team has
San Jose's playing better, too. That's another
San Jose
thing
is playing better as they've
coach.
abandoned the style that they played before. So you got to kind of look at the recent games to see what they're really like. Although there's still a little MLS After Dark energy in them. But yes, you're right. That's a growing rivalry. But because of the 2 weeks, I think really it could have been anyone. You want to go into those 2 weeks, like you said, with a good taste in your mouth. And it feels like LAFC has gotten to have it all until as of late. So maybe we can get back on that horse. And
just looking ahead of that Open Cup game, and the Galaxy got through their first 2 games without having to play a lot of their first team. And they did it against the team down in California United. Was it California Strikers down in Irvine?
Cal United Strikers was the team that they just beat.
And they played, the Galaxy didn't have to really play their first team, kind of rotate a little bit, but they're going to play their first team here. So
it'd be crazy not to.
I know, but the second team put them in a position where they didn't have too much of a burden. So the Galaxy do have an edge in that case.
They didn't have to play Portland like we had.
They didn't have to play Portland as well.
Because even if Portland comes in and they're like, we have some injuries, we have some COVID, you still play your first team because you're like, well, we just want to beat you. We don't care.
Right.
It's not our problem.
And we didn't talk about what an incredible scenes to see the crowd there in the 32-52 going sha-na-na, hey, good. But I've covered Open Cup games in front of not 10 people, but it felt like it sometimes. I covered a final between the Metro Stars and the Fire. Bob Bradley coached the Metro Stars, I think, at the time.
With Michael, probably.
Yeah, and it was at Giant Stadium, and it said 5,000 people, and that's an 80,000-seat stadium. There wasn't 5,000 people. It was like 2,000 people.
Yeah, it's a cavern stadium.
It was just weird.
No,
See a little pocket of this giant.
Well, remember on the podcast you said, there's some people that are like, come on, is it really a rivalry? Watch that game.
Yeah.
Watch the crowd in that game. Yes, it's a real rivalry.
Yeah, and
nothing had to be coaxed.
And the LAFC and a few other clubs have really lifted this Open Cup where you see this atmosphere. It's really important for the development of the game because we didn't have the Open Cup, and now that playing parallel with.
I was going to say that. I know we took a couple years off, and maybe that's all it is, but the Open Cup does feel a little special this year.
Feels bigger.
Yeah.
Feels bigger, and some teams have really delivered. I think 13 of the 16 remaining are MLS teams, so
but there's been some good upsets.
Cinderella, the David coming through there, not probably going to happen this year.
The gap between the teams is now on display, especially as you get into these later rounds. But there has been some upsets.
Maybe we'll see more in that because it felt like USL teams are a little bit well off the wheel now.
Well, I think what a lot of MLS teams learned was if you play your second team, you're risking it.
You're gonna, yeah.
Where it used to be, there's always been some upsets. It's like teams never learn. But that's why I felt a little more special this year because I felt like more MLS teams were taking the Open Cup serious.
So there's
understanding what you get out of it.
There's a lot to look forward to, a lot of games. So soak them all in because what are you going to be doing for those 2 weeks? Take some time off.
Yeah, you're going to miss it.
I'm taking a little time off.
You are?
Yeah, I'm going to Helsinki. I'll explain it later, but
Max with the great planning.
I don't know what to tell you. It's not my final destination, but it was the cheapest flight out of LAX, and it was direct. Hopefully I come back in one piece.
I'm just going to sleep.
Get out. Maybe a little. What about our Catalina jet ski trip with Harvey?
Update on that. No, I shouldn't share.
We'll do an update on this. When we spoke to John McCarthy, his dad reached out to us, and he says he is willing to come in here, and we're going to have a cheesesteak.
I'll have some cheesecake after, though.
No, I don't like cheesecake.
No?
Cheesesteak, I'll eat.
Okay.
Cheesecake, not for me. But I think we don't want to go too in-depth, but there we go. We're going to be back here on Inside LAFC, and we'll have Marco Garcés, a very interesting conversation coming up here on the Max and Vince podcast. Back here on Inside LAFC, the MVP podcast. Thrilled to welcome in Marco Garcés, Director of Football Operations here for LAFC. And we want to talk a lot about you. So we even said we might have to split it in two because there's so much to address. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on coming to LAFC. When did this seem like a reality? When did they approach you about, hey, we have something here. Our academy is coming together with our Las Vegas Lights partnership and the first team, and we want you to be part of it.
Well, I've been trying to come to the MLS for quite some time, and by the time that John called me, well, it was a very pleasing surprise, because as I told you, I was looking for this opportunity, and to come from LAFC, which was so special for us because basically that was a team that trashed us in León, right? So and me being a part of Pachuca, I was a part of the people involved in building that roster for León, and we were doing quite well in the Mexican League. We were basically winning everything. And when LAFC comes down there and just beat us, it was like a shock of reality,
Really?
Like the MLS boys are coming and they're for real,
But you said you wanted to come to MLS. Was that the stimulus to it, or is this something you've seen from the league and said, I want to be part of that? There's something good.
Yeah,
good happening.
You could see that there was something good boiling in here because of the openness. When you come from football in Mexico, there's like this culture that just weighs you down and doesn't allow you to try nothing new because it has always been done like that in the past, and everyone has had like 2 million championships to account for, and nothing new can ever be tried. And this openness that the MLS has, it was very attractive for me,
Yeah, you said in your press conference, I had asked you, I said, you look out into Los Angeles and you see the talent pool, and you said there might be too much talent.
Yes.
So when you come here and you start to say that you got to try some new things, what were some things that you kind of put on your list as wow, there's so much talent, but at least I can start to be expansive. I can be creative. What were some creative ideas that you kind of wanted to start to instill when you first came?
Yeah, you have to think outside of the box because actually I think that that's a problem in here. There's too much talent. So how do you give minutes to all these players? Because you know that the only way to develop players is through giving them minutes. You know, the only way to develop players is to having them play. So, but if you have 5 good kids at the same age group in the same position, you tend not to be as patient as you could be, right? Because anyone plays badly for 5 minutes and then you just substitute them and he doesn't play for 6 months again. So you have to be creative in how to create opportunities for all these kids, and you have to think outside of the box. Should we try and go wider, or how are we gonna assure that this boys get the right stimulus in order to develop, you know?
And you're still figuring that out, right? I go, how do we handle this? Because we know the talent is here. How much do we focus on one player or focus on the masses? How many minutes do we give them? This is still all?
Yeah,
you're all fleshing this out.
Yeah, it's an ongoing discussion. Should we go like the European model, in which you try to nurture talent and you try to give personal development programs to everyone and get really high on them, or should we go for the South American model, which is just about filtering and having as much kids involved as possible, keep costs low, and just wait it out, see who comes through, you know? So I think eventually we're going to get into a mixture of both, and I think it can be really, really successful, you know?
That's very exciting.
What I want to know is when you start looking at a player, and you can take it anywhere you want, whatever age group you want to start with, but
Yep.
what are your starting points when you're starting to look at players in and around Los Angeles, and you're starting to think, that's a player that we want to bring in and we want to have them be a part of this setup?
Well, usually you look for qualities that you cannot give. So you basically go back to the acronym that the so abused acronym of Ajax of TIPS, right? Technique, intelligence, personality, speed. Because these are things that you cannot give.
Okay.
You cannot give a player technique. That's all the hours that he spent kicking against the wall, right? You can't give him intelligence. Either he can learn or he cannot learn. You cannot give him personality. If he's bold, if he's courageous, if he's brave, that's very hard to give. Speed, it's mostly a neuromuscular thing that you cannot really provide. If you see a kid that has technique, intelligence, personality, speed, then you want to have a hold of it. Because other things, understanding, tactical awareness, strength, power, you can give that. You know, it's easy to give that. But in here, you see so much talent, that kind of intelligence of being able to see the right play and try to play it. I found that a lot in here.
What's the process like to identify that talent? Because we know there's a big group of people.
Mm-hmm.
This is a big city. You said there's a lot of talent here.
And a lot of traffic.
A lot of.
Yeah, so how do you get from
Oh my
field to
God! You need
field?
a helicopter.
Yeah.
I know we don't have one, but we need one. And look, and the old adage in the United States is that no one wants to leave a player lost in the cracks. It's going to happen sometimes, but how do you be as thorough as possible to be able to have that communication with everyone so that you can see as many players and hope that that one guy doesn't slip through the cracks?
Yeah, and it's all about resources, right? So I think you have to take the 80-20 rule. Like, okay, with 20% of the resources, we can scout 80% of the players. To go to 100%, that would mean increasing our resources in 80%. And it's something that I think you just have to make a how you call it?
A gut. What's it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a decision. You have to just
Yeah,
decide
yeah,
that you're gonna miss out on some, or you're gonna have to do
compromise.
something. Yeah, you're gonna
Okay.
compromise.
That was the word I was looking for. Like, you just come to a compromise and say, okay, there's 20% of players that won't get here, you know, but we can really focus on these 80% of players. And should we go through an affiliated school program, or should we try to get into a loan basis so that you can get, again, minutes to all these players, because it's the only way that they'll develop.
If I could follow up, if there's advice because we hear it all the time from parents, and they have a son or a daughter who's interested in getting it, advice for them so that those kids can be in the best position to perhaps get a pathway to an LAFC.
Yeah, there's plenty of open scouting events or combines that we're constantly scouting, and we know that we try to do our best to get into every little league and small league and unaffiliated league. We've started talks with Cal South and SoCal and Laufa and everyone around, so that we can make our best effort to make sure that we watch them all. You know.
We talked a little bit about your work in Mexico, Pachuca. You talked a little about León. Obviously, your net extends wider than that, though. You also have done some scouting for Manchester United. And this might seem an obvious question, but maybe you can take this a certain way. When you're scouting for LAFC, how is that different for scouting for, let's say, a Manchester United and the player they're looking for? Because I understand the money is the obvious thing.
That was good.
The money.
You got the play.
The money. But,
we all know what that means.
but you're all still fishing in the same spots, right? And sometimes, Manchester United might say that's a good player, but just it's not for us, even if the price is right.
Yep.
And same for LAFC. That's a good player, but the price. But where is the major difference?
Yeah, well, in the beginning, I thought like it was going to be completely different. When we had these workshops in Man United, where we had to go every 6 months, and we met with Sir Alex and everything. And Sir Alex was always very clear about it. Like, if you're doubting, then it's not for us. When you see a player good enough for Man United, you'll know. You'll know right from the start. But I don't think it differs too much from scouting for Pachuca or LAFC. I don't think that the difference is so clear cut. I still get excited when I see a good player. I still feel it in my stomach, like, because you're watching games and you're not watching anything, and you don't think that you saw someone special. But when you see someone, I mean, it's a special feeling, and I don't think that differs from Man United or LAFC or Pachuca or whatever.
Have you had those instances where you saw somebody maybe not at first that wasn't special, and then they just were able to show maybe a second, third? You're like, okay, this guy is God, or a guy who's kind of defied the explanation.
Never one look, right? Like, how many times are you going to see a player?
Yeah, and there's so many factors that affect it. Like, you can have a very good player on a very bad team, so he's not receiving the ball often, or he's the goalkeeper of a very good team, so he doesn't get any shots against. So there's all these things that matter. So, yes, sometimes you try to watch them training session, or watch them in small-sided games in these 4v4 and stuff, and those are more revealing than a full game. So, yeah, it's something that it's an ongoing conversation. Nobody really knows how to do it perfectly.
As you become a known quantity in and around the world, and as more people start to see you in your LAFC gear, do you have to go like restaurant reviewers have to go like incognito because they feel like the chef might put out extra food that wasn't there? Do you have to kind of hide? And make sure that if you're at a game,
we have some good disguises if you need it. So
not really. I'm not at that stage. I have a pretty average face, so I blend in. I blend
rubbish.
in. I blend in.
Just a thought about coming from Mexico, and look. More and more, we're seeing these relationships on the field between Liga MX and MLS, and you have seen now MLS for a good amount of time here with LAFC, and obviously your experience there, 11 years with Pachuca, and just with Liga MX overall. How do you see a functioning relationship between those two leagues, not just with games that they played, but maybe in a shared space where they're developing players? Maybe a young Mexican player comes the MLS route, or vice versa?
Well, it's very interesting that what you just touched upon, because we're living in this bi-national market, which is very particular of us, because we have the passion in Mexico, the real history of things mattering very much. I mean, we only have one sport, which is soccer, and it's the only thing that matters over there, because nothing else matters. And then you have the growth of the American market and the money and the American market. So it's very interesting. But one thing that I've just been in the Dallas Cup and GA Cup, and I came back like a month ago. One thing that I didn't think that we saw coming from a Mexican perspective is that the MLS has improved not only the American national team, but also the Central American national teams. So I saw like El Salvador beat really badly Tigres, which is a top academy in Mexico, and they beat them
in the Dallas Cup.
Yeah, in the Dallas Cup, they beat them 3-0. And it was with all players of the MLS. You saw Barahona playing for our under-19s. Nathan Ordaz was playing in that El Salvador team. And so you see that this growth is not only affecting this bi-market that we were bi-national market, but it's also improving the pool of players for the Central American countries,
That's great. And that's great to hear.
Well, not
not
so
in Salvador.
great if
Yeah, I
you're
was
in
gonna say-
Mexican.
No,
because
not in
now
Mexico.
we
How much is it for-
might not
I mean,
get into
that's
the
gotta-
World
A
Cup.
high, we'll be fine. But a high tide,
No,
certainly.
but to his point, Max, Mexico's like, U.S. is up and coming. Let's watch out for them. And then they look and go, oh, where's El Salvador coming from? Where is Honduras coming from? We thought we had them well in the rearview mirror. They're back.
Yeah, and I was speaking to Luis Fernando Tena, I'm the Mexican coach for the Guatemalan team, and he says, yeah, now we're scouting heavily on the academy players from the MLS. You know?
Yeah, and we've seen Guatemala's Josh Perez was playing for some of these players all over Central America. How is the perception changing from Mexico when they look at MLS? Obviously, success is going to help change. But when you speak to your Mexican colleagues about how they view MLS, which was probably down here, Seattle Sounders win the CONCACAF Champions League, that obviously changed it a bit. But how do you think the view from Mexico is about this league?
Well, you know what happened with Seattle Sounders winning the CONCACAF Champions and all that. I think that we know that now it's not only a threat; it's a reality that we're going to struggle. And I think there's an increase in interest on how things are going, like in here. Like I had calls all the time from Mexican clubs presidents, and they want to understand better about the roster regulations and how to sell to the American market and how to price players and how to negotiate, because with all the categories in roster regulations in here, you know that sometimes you can't push for more money. That's the only amount available, and where to push and how to push. So I think there's an increased interest in everything that has a relationship with MLS. Right?
That's really interesting because
It's all interesting, Marco.
Well,
It
yeah,
all is.
I know that's why we got to bring you back 2 or 3 times. But that was going to be where I was going to kind of wrap it up. Was, do you see the pendulum kind of swinging? Because I feel like MLS is going to be buying more from Mexico and not vice versa.
Well, that's a very interesting talk that I just had with Jesus Martinez, which is one of my closest friends, and he's basically the owner of Pachuca and Everton in Chile and León in Mexico as well. And I was telling him just that. I think that we have to stop looking at Europe and start looking to the MLS, because I think that's going to be the next big market, the next big sale opportunity for us. And you've seen it with Jairo Torres coming here, with players that they're paying good money for them. You know,
More money. That's it.
yeah, money.
It just makes a better league.
Yeah.
Marco, this has been a fascinating. I think we've just scraped the surface, really.
Barely.
We barely scraped the surface. So we hope to maybe have you back here again if you don't mind at some point.
Whenever you want, I'm always.
That's what we
here,
were
so-
hoping to hear.
We try to get people on record as saying that, so that we've got it. we've got it now.
Marco, do you remember saying this? No.
yeah.
But we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this Inside LAFC Max and Vince podcast. Make sure you download, share, subscribe, tell a friend. Check out LAFC Austin on Wednesday night. A lot to look forward to over the next couple weeks, and we'll be here along for the ride. So long.
Oh, yes! They knocked on the door, and they finally kicked it through.